what's going on? It's Michael Yo. Welcome to the Yo Show. Today's podcast is awesome. I love this guy. I met him at the Comedy Cellar like 2 weeks ago. And you know my thing, if you listen to the pod, you know why I love the Comedy Cellar so much. Because when I came up in comedy, I really didn't hang out with a lot of comedians because, I had a 8 to 5 job. So I would perform late at night and then run home. So I feel like the Comedy Cellar has really opened me up to meet new people, meet new comics. And I feel like finally I'm starting to get into this. I don't know. It's weird. Like this community, I feel like more a part of a community, and the Comedy Cellar has definitely done that for me. But today, Jon Laster, he's a phenomenal comedian. He was All American in basketball in high school, went through college. He experienced some rehab. He now has created an app that's going to make him $1 billion probably 2 years from now. The dude is a genius. He's smart. And I really wanted to interview him as soon as possible. And I think you're really going to enjoy this podcast, man. The dude is absolutely great. All his handles, all the information about him will be in the description below. And anything you hear us talk about, description below. And man, I just got to say thank you so much for all the love. My special is still climbing. We just went over 240,000 views. My YouTube channel has gone from 3,000 people 2.5 months ago to now we're at close to 107,000. You're talking about 104,000 subscribers in 2.5 months, and that's because of you. So do me a favor. If you're not subscribed, hit that button. Bing! Make it happen right down there. I really would appreciate it. Really would mean a lot. All right, let's get into it. Yo Show. Yo Show. What's up, Jon?
What it do, yo? How's everything?
Good. So where are you right now?
Yo, I am in Denver, Colorado, unable to get into my room from they won't let me in for an early check-in.
Oh, okay. So if
Yeah.
you don't know the history of me and Jon, we met at the Comedy Cellar just 2 weeks ago. I love the conversation with Jon because you're intelligent, first of all. You're very intelligent, first of all. Yeah, you got the app called Blap that you're doing. You're going to be a billionaire soon. But besides that, we were talking basketball. And I said, I think Golden State was going to win in 6, Now, you said you actually thought, and you had good points, and you made me realize it. You're like, Boston, you think Boston's going to win still, right?
I still believe Boston will win. Let me say this, man, to begin with. Now, I'm biased because I've never been a fan of Golden State. I know that sounds crazy. Oh, they're a dynasty, this, that, the other. But I think that whole dynasty is nonsensical, farcical. I just think that they are the weakest dynasty in the history of any sport ever.
What are you talking about? How could you even say that? They're winning with straight up shooters. That's what you don't like?
I think it's fugazi, it's garbage, and I think that history will not be kind to this dynasty. Let me just make my case. I'll make it in 60 seconds, and then you go ahead and rebut it.
Okay.
So the first time that LeBron and Golden State lock horns when they win their championship, a lot of people forget that Dellavedova was his second best player because Kevin Love had got hurt the series before. Yep. And then in game 1, Kyrie broke his kneecap. LeBron still took them 6 games, right? As Dellavedova as his second best player. So he's handicapped. What does LeBron do? Does he call Kevin Durant? No. He goes back in and says, you know what? I slipped on the ice when we fought last time, homies. I'm gonna give you let's get a heads up and see what happens. They go back in there. He wins the championship. What do they do after they win 73 games? You go get Kevin Durant, and then you win those 2 titles. So the first one you won when this guy was handicapped. And then you felt like, God, we can't really beat him. So you go get the guy you just beat. Can you imagine if Magic Johnson had lost to the Celtics one time and then goes to Boston?
Okay, see, now you're living in the past right now because it wasn't like that back then. You can't even compare the two.
I'm saying that's all 3 of their chips. To me, that's like, really?
Yeah, but you can't compare that time with this time because Michael Jordan to me is the greatest player ever. And it's not because of just stats or championships, it's what he did for the entire game. He changed the shoe game, he's changed the culture of the NBA. He made it like Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, they were commercial, but they weren't commercial like Jordan. Like he told, like LeBron is a great player, he's one of the best, but he hasn't changed the game. Steph Curry has changed the game more than LeBron James to me. So that's what I say is a
I
great
would
player and a transformational player where you can change an entirely. After Steph Curry, everybody adapted their game to shooting three. Threes is the thing. I was at the park the other day. They have 8-year-old kids shooting threes. Before you would never see that. You would never.
yeah,
Steph Curry changed the entire game.
changing the game and being in awe of a dynasty are two different things. I completely agree with you that he changed the game, but I also believe that I don't know. I'm just like this whole
Well,
like whole
if we're taking your case, Kevin Durant left, got two super players, Harden, and he got Kyrie, and they fell on their face. So there must be something with Steph and Golden State that can win championships with Kevin Durant. Because to me, Kevin Durant will never win a chip when he's the star player. Even though he was with Golden State, you got to have that backbone. It's like LeBron going to Miami, right? He had to make that move to learn how to be a champion from Dwayne Wade. Then he could go win a chip. Like Kevin Durant, I felt wasn't that dude.
okay. So then let me pose this question to you:
Mhm.
how many players after they won 73 games that year could you have added to that team the following year and still won a championship?
Oh, I think you could have won anybody. I mean, you could have a solid player would have helped them out, and they still would have won, I believe.
I
It
could
didn't have to.
I couldn't agree with you more. So to
Yeah,
me, it was like, really?
but what? But if the opportunity is there, why not take the best player? I mean,
I'm not
that's
I'm
just
not
business, bro.
I'm not
That's
saying that
business.
I'm not saying that you don't do it, but I'm just saying to me, it's like, eh.
Okay. So I want to talk about comedy because that's how we met through the cellar. How'd you get into stand up?
I wanted to. I had seen a bunch of people on TV and the movies and found out that they were all stand-ups first. And I, was a big time basketball player here in Denver. And what was suggested to me as a ball
Now,
player,
hold on one second. When you say big time basketball player, let's go to that because I know you were athletic, but when you say big time, what does that mean?
I was a high school All-American, man, and I signed in the Big Ten, which was the Big Ten and the ACC were the best two conferences. You know what I mean? So of the 20 best 20 30 players in the country, you're going to the Big Ten or the ACC. So I
Yeah.
was one of those
What year was this? Just so
long,
people know.
long time ago, long time ago in the
Okay.
90s. In
In
the
the
90s,
90s. Okay, so being like this is interesting because I don't talk to a lot of all-American high school basketball players. I've known some, but not well. What's the pressure like being in high school, being an all-American? I know it's cool. The aesthetic is cool, but is there a lot of pressure on a kid?
you know what? I think there was a lot of pressure, but I think that you're just too young and dumb to really understand it. Do you know what I mean? Because at that age, the guys who could play the way that I could play, you're typically head and shoulders above the next two or three guys on anyone else's team. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like I had a police escort one time walk me into a gym because they were threatening me. Like I was that dude. So you're just better than everybody. You know what I mean? So I don't know how much pressure, so to speak, there is. I think it probably kicks in a little more college and then definitely in the pros, because there's so much money at stake at that time.
Okay, so high school all-American in basketball. Then you go to college. What college did you go to?
Minnesota and Colorado State. Went to sign with Minnesota and then ended up transferring back to Colorado State.
Okay, so why'd you pick Minnesota first?
You know what? To be flagrantly honest with you, man, I didn't even really know what I was doing back then. So my
Mhm.
brother would sort out the mail. And we used to get so much mail that the post office had decided, like, they were like, yo, this guy's a big deal. We'll bring your mail on Sundays also because we know it can't fit in the box. So they would just drop like this plastic container box on our all the mail they couldn't fit in the box. On Sundays, they would dump it in this big post office box and come back and get it on Monday. And my brother would sort it out. So my mom, when you're in high school, all young black man. You know, if you ask us all the same question at that age, what would you do if I gave you $1 million? I'd buy my mom a house.
Yes.
So it was the same story when they're coming in to recruit you. Whoever your mom likes the most is probably where you're going.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So my mom really fell in love with the coach in Minnesota, and that's where I ended up going. And my brother was like, this is a good path to the NBA for you. But I had been advised the easiest path to the NBA for me would have been to leave Denver and finish my high school basketball in New York. And I opted not to do that. And I didn't want to make the same mistake again when it came to comedy. So when it came to do comedy, I was like, I'm not going to be the big fish in the little pond again. I learned that lesson. You know, if you want to climb Mount Everest, go to Mount Everest.
Yeah, so did you realize when you got to college you weren't as good as the high school rankings, or did you just fall out of love of basketball? What happened?
I think I fell behind at a really critical time.
Mm.
So, first day of practice, my senior year, I broke my wrist.
Oh,
Slowest healing, yeah, my navicular, slowest healing bone in the body. And I think that stumble, I stumbled in the college. Whereas if I hadn't, my college experience would have been very different. My path to the NBA would have been very different. But I didn't understand back then that, when something like that hits you, you don't turn it into a pity party. You know what
no.
I mean? You have to get up off the mat and train twice as hard. And I didn't understand that back then. That was one of my takeaways from basketball. Like, oh, broke my wrist. Now you got to really ramp it up. You really have to work twice as hard. And I turned it more into a pity party. Like, oh my God, we grew up in the hood. I'm cursed. I'm cursed.
Ah,
Yeah, it was a poor me party.
so you go throughout college. Did you go to the NBA or no?
No,
You
no,
didn't go to the NBA. So you're sitting there after college, the game you love is gone.
yes.
Um, and I know that's a mental issue right there in itself, getting over that. Was that tough for you?
Oh man, a lot of detoxes, rehabs, outpatients. Uh,
Like what the mental rehabs? Was it
no. For alcohol and drugs.
oh wow, okay.
Yeah.
Was that because sports was over and you needed something else to kind of get you
I
by?
mean, I think it was like you said. I mean, in hindsight, it probably was some residual from that. You know what I mean? Now you go from the man since you were 14 or
Mhm.
15, you show up in New York City where no one knows you or cares about you, and you're getting booed at night. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Um, and then as I got good, it was open bar every night, and then that turned into a hamster wheel that yeah landed me in some detoxes and rehabs.
So, did you go straight from basketball after college into comedy? Did you have to figure
Yes.
it out first?
I took off running. I had one box, man, and I took off for New York City. I was going to get this comedy thing, get it right.
Do you remember the first time you did a set and where was that at? In what year?
It was the Boston Comedy Club almost 20 years ago. My buddy Will Sylvince put me on stage, and I went down in flames.
Tell me about it.
Bro, complete silence. And I'm trying to tell some jokes about New York City and how they dress in camouflage. It was horrible.
How long was your set?
I think back then they gave you 3 minutes.
3 minutes. Do you
Yeah.
remember a joke you said in that set?
I think I remember, being like, "Hey, I don't understand why y'all wear camouflage out here in New York. There's no trees. Like, where you gonna camouflage yourself by a subway?" So,
Which is not bad, so that didn't get nothing though.
yo, when I tell you it didn't get nothing, it got nothing.
So here's what's interesting to me. You go from a player being heralded, cheers, and now you're getting boos. Was that or did you get booed off stage or it was just silence?
I did get booed, man. I got booed. One time I remember the second time he put me on stage, the guy before me got booed, right?
Uh-huh.
Like completely booed on stage. So this is the second time I ever went on stage. So 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 Will sees me bomb, right? And he says, "Hey, man, something about you, you got some charisma, whatever." He said, "I have this other spot. You can come do it on Tuesday." Because the first time I went up was on a Sunday. So
Okay.
Tuesday spot. So I go to the Tuesday spot. The guy before me gets booed completely off stage. And I go up and I said, "Hey guys," and I can sense the boo coming. I said, I'm going to do my impersonation of a comedian who's not doing good that leaves, right? So they get quiet, right? And they're really interested. And I put the mic on the stool and left.
And that was your set?
That was my set.
Did they get it? Did you get a clap?
They were in shock. They were just silent. I think they thought I was kidding. I was not kidding. I was not coming back.
So you didn't want to go through a second round of booze. That's what you're saying?
Oh, yo, after I saw what happened to that first dude, I was like, you know what? I can take a hint. I can take a hint.
How long, and I know you said you weren't going back, where you were like, okay, I'm starting to get laughs and I can attempt, people want to book me now in clubs. How many years did it take you for that?
Probably not that long, because what happened was I would go on stage, and because I was so scared to get booed, I would just start snapping on people. So
Oh,
then people were like, hey, this guy is fast on his feet. So some of my friends were like, hey, man, you want to do 5 minutes, or I'm not going to be here next Tuesday. You could host when I'm gone.
yeah.
So I start guest hosting, and then I ended up getting a joke or two that I could actually use. And then once I had started hosting, a buddy of mine, Talent, this comedian named Talent out here, he said, yo, John, man, you're really fast. He said, you should get your own little bar show, start hosting, it'll make you better. And that's what
Yeah.
I ended up doing. And that is when the separation between me and my peers began.
It's interesting, and I talk about it with comics all the time. It's about stage time, man, because we all know comics that have been doing it X number of years, but their stage time is like a third of that. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
Yes.
And
So yeah, and
and
you get a lot more stage time when you're hosting, especially on the hood circuit, because the hood circuit, everyone comes to see the host. Everything else is gravy.
yeah.
Whereas when you get on the mainstream circuit, the host is kind of the you're just kind of keeping the train running on down the track.
When did you get into the cellar? How was that process for you?
You know what? I had a good friend. I was working at a club in New York, and so you know how it is when a new booker comes in, everybody's kind of done
Yes.
almost.
Yeah.
Because so I'm working at this club, Stand Up New York, and believe it or not, I had survived 3 different bookers, which is like a record in comedy, right?
At Stand Up New York.
At Stand Up, I survived 3 bookers, and
Wow.
then the third booker says I'm leaving. So my thought was, I'm done. You can't survive 4 bookers.
Yeah.
New booker comes in. They announce the new booker. It's my personal friend. Not only is it my personal friend, at the end of the year, she put for her New Year's caption, it's a picture of me and her hugging, my last year's MVP, Jon Laster, right?
Ah, that's big. That's big.
So I'm in there. And then sure enough, she comes in and doesn't book me. Yes, believe it or not. So I end up having to go down to the Comedy Cellar.
Wait a minute. Why don't you think she booked you? Was it because she didn't want to play favoritism, or what do you think it was?
Well, no, she told me that the reason being was she needed to get other comedians in the club first before she brought me back. She was like, "You already work here. I got to get them in, and then I'll put you back in the rotation." But that wasn't paying my bills.
Yeah,
I was
no.
like, you know what? I'll just make a run down to the cellar. I go down to the cellar. A buddy of mine sitting there, and we're sitting there. He's like, come down, hang out with me. Another friend comes in and says, hey, John, are you working here? I said, no. He goes and tells Esty, the booker there, he said, yo, the funniest guy you've never seen is sitting around the corner at the Village Underground. And then, of course, Esty pushes back and says, are you sure you're going to stick with that?
Nice.
You sure you want to
I
go with
love Esty. I love it. I love it.
you sure you want to try that one? And he said, yo, I'm willing to stake my reputation. The funniest guy you've never seen is around the corner at one of your other clubs. So, he says, yo, she said you could send her a video, whatever. And she told me that because what he said was so insane that she had to watch the video. She was like, I got to see this. And then she
Uh-huh.
said she watched it and she was like, yeah, he's that good. And she said, get him in here. Because she told me she wasn't going to let anyone in until November. It was July because they didn't let very many people in the cellar back then. This is 6 years
Yeah.
ago. This is
Mhm.
6 years ago, way before the pandemic and all that. So yeah. So she says, yeah, November, I'm going to start letting new people in. and she watched the video and said, you know what, you could start this weekend. And that
Who
was
gave you that recommendation?
you know what, it was Lenny Marcus and Ted Alexandro, so the two of them, but it was Lenny who had said the over the top comment that made
Uh-huh.
her kind of like, he better be funny.
Yeah, right? You gotta be funny. You gotta so did you try out for Essie, or was the tape the tryout? You didn't have to perform in front
No,
of
you
her.
still have to audition. You still got to come in
Okay,
on.
so how was your audition? How'd that go?
The audition, man, fortunately went really, really good. And I think part of it was I was just trying to find some money to replace what
Mm.
I had lost at Stand Up New York. I had no idea all of the good that I would come in contact with once I got into the cellar. I didn't realize that, oh my God, you meet people who are doing this and doing that. You know what I mean? I had no idea what I was walking into. Because if I had, I would have been far more nervous
Oh,
to.
yeah, like, it's such a legendary place, like, you could sit at that table, and you got writers from Saturday Night Live that are doing sets before and after you. You got all types of agents coming through the clubs. You never know who's gonna be there, man.
On a
The
regular.
energy the energy in all of those rooms in New York is insane, and I remember because I just got passed probably about a year and a half ago. And I remember I went to New York. It's so interesting because I remember before the pandemic, because I perform at Gotham all the time. And I went to the cellar and it was hard to get in. I'm a comic, but if you're not a cellar comic, they don't really care.
Yeah,
You can be a comic, but if you're not a cellar comic, no love, no love.
right.
And to be able to walk up there after getting passed and Liz or Esty waiting for you, and you go in there and then you crush on one of those stages, it's the only time I always get excited to perform, but it's the only time I really get butterflies.
Yeah.
And I still get a little bit in that room because it's just, I think of all the greats that have hit those stages. I think of, it's not even about the crowd, it's about the respect of other comedians or watch it. So that's what I love. That's what I get excited for.
It's the Yankee Stadium of comedy clubs, yo.
It is. It is. It's legendary, man. It's legendary. So what's been your most legendary night there?
Oh God, the $1 billion show.
What was that?
Yeah, the $1 billion show. But yeah, one night, man, we're there, and there's a bunch of because the cellar, you never know who's stopping through, and there's a bunch of heavyweights sitting there.
Now, when you say heavyweights, who's in the room?
At the time, it was Amy Schumer and Seinfeld.
And they're sitting at the table, or what are they doing?
They were just sitting there at the table, and they had
Okay.
come for two different reasons.
Uh-huh.
But we were like, we can't get everybody on. So, the show starts up, and my buddy Ryan Hamilton goes on, who is a
Yep.
beast. He was a
Love
beast.
Ryan.
And then Dave Attell goes on, and then Jerry Seinfeld goes on. Jerry Seinfeld, after the show, leaves because we thought that was it.
Yeah.
So after Jerry Seinfeld goes on, Amy Schumer was like, yo, can I do 5? So now Amy goes on. Right after that, Aziz was already there getting ready for Saturday Night Live. So Aziz goes on. But since all of them had gone on, this is already a historical show.
Yeah, it's already, yeah.
So Chris Rock and Dave Chappelle are sitting in the hallway, and they watched all that happen. They was like, well, then we going on. You're not going to leave us out of this
Right?
newsworthy show. So then Chris Rock goes on and does 45, and then Dave did like an hour. And then Dave walks on stage and sits down. No one ever reports this, right? And Dave sits on the piano and lights up a cigarette. He said, hey, don't get too excited because Cat Williams is next. And right after he sat down, he said, this is a lot of pressure. This is what he said. He said, this is a lot of pressure. He said, $1 billion worth of comedy just went up in front of me. And that's where the coining of the $1 billion show came from.
Wow.
He said, there was $1 billion worth of comedy just went on in front of me. And that's where the coining of the term, the $1 billion show. But it was the greatest organic comedy show in the history of comedy. And I remember coming back and not even saying that because I was the only one who, in my Instagram, I'm typing in who's going on. CNN screenshots it, and then it, hit the wire.
Yeah.
And at 6 a.m, they were calling from Australia because they don't allow cameras in there.
Oh, yeah.
So I forced Will to take my phone and take a picture so that there was some evidence of it. I said, when I go up there to get him off stage, I'm gonna grab Aziz.
So
So
were you hosting?
yes,
Ah, gotcha. Okay, so you were hosting the whole show. Wow.
yes, hosting the whole ride. Yeah, and somebody said, "Yo, man, was you like doing funny stuff?" I was like, "Bruh, I was as quiet as a
Yep.
church mouse.
Yep.
All I was trying to do is because you don't want to miss the opportunity to have been a part of that. Why would you go up there and run your mouth and one of them says, you know what, I'll just go on next show."
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was just bringing them up, and then people were like, "Hey, did the crowd believe when you were announcing people that that's really who was coming to the stage?" And I was like, I had never lied to them.
Yeah, yeah, and that's a place. It's like the Comedy Store in LA, the Cellar in New York. You expect it. I mean, in a weird way, if somebody says Dave Chappelle's, you're like, of course he is. This is the Comedy Cellar. Like if he's at the comedy, you're like, of course. So the photo was all. I saw that photo where everybody was on stage, right?
Right.
And how was it for you? I mean, look, I've met Dave, I've met all the comedians, but it's like what's different about New York and Vegas. It's kind of we're put in a situation where we kind of have to hang out in Vegas. You know what I mean? But in New York, everybody's running in and out. Does everybody just because I've never been at the Cellar when these heavy hitters are there like that? Is there a thing where people just kind of stay away from them? Like even if you're a regular there? I was at the Comedy Store when Joe Rogan's still huge, but he was there, right? And you see people circling Joe. And I've always been the dude that, like just stays back. And then when I walk by, Joe says, "What's up?" I say, "What's up?" And then I keep it moving. I'm not gonna is it that vibe when those guys are there? It's kind of people kind of hover around them.
Yeah, there is a bit of a hover around, but there's an etiquette, and you know when
Yeah.
they don't want to be bothered because they'll sit at another table.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean they'll sit at another table that people won't let them come around because it can get weird. Do you know what I'm saying? If you don't semi shield them, number one, they won't feel as comfortable coming there. So then you
Yeah.
have less drop ins. But it can
Mhm.
also get weird. I mean, we were there one night and we're sitting there talking, and and I was like, "Hey guys, great show, whatever, whatever." And I go to the bar and this guy was like, "Hey man, I'm gonna propose to my girl tonight, whatever, whatever." I was like, "Hey man, congratulations, whatever." And he's walking out of the restaurant with his girlfriend at the time, gets down on one knee in front of Aziz and Chris Rock.
Oh no.
I know.
Oh, that's weird.
And proposes. So then she says yes. He gets up and kisses her. And after he kisses her, he leans over the table to like shake Chris Rock's hand and talk to Aziz. And he's like, "Hey guys, I knew I was gonna propose." And they were like, "Dude, you just proposed. Like y'all gotta leave. Like
Yeah.
you should be off to be happy with." And the guy was like, "Oh yeah, you're right, you're right." But he just wanted to do that in front of them.
In front of
So
them. Yeah.
you do have to keep a little, otherwise you'll get a bunch of crazy shit like that happening.
Yeah. What's your weirdest experience at the Cellar? Anything crazy other than that?
I think that might be the
You know,
craziest,
you
the
know,
the proposal thing, because everything else, people, we kind of have figured out how to keep it.
it's self-policing. Like
Yes,
people like the comics look out for other comics, and
yes,
it's always been like that because here's what's great about it. Like Dave and Chris were already big, but I'm sure when they weren't, on their rise, it's kind of like when even Michael Che right now, right? He's big, he's on SNL, he loves to hang at the Cellar. Every time I go there, he's there, right? And it's a thing where I remember Liz, and this is how weird I was. I remember is like sit at the table, and I was like, oh, my thing is like that table's legendary to me. And I was like, I don't even deserve to sit at that. No. And I sat like I just ate by myself at another table. I didn't want to sit at the table because I felt like I didn't deserve it. I respect that table so much. Just she goes, Liz, come and sit at the freak effing table, or
yeah.
I'm gonna come over there and grab you and make a big. So I sit down, and it's so amazing. Michael Che sat next to me, and then you realize, oh, they're big, but it's a hang, man.
It's
They just want to hang and feel
no. The
normal.
other, the other thing though too, man, is even once it's almost like a fraternity or a sorority. So even though you may be a freshman in the sorority or a sophomore in the sorority, you're still in
Yeah.
the frat. You know what I mean? So you know what I mean. No, you're not going to be. No one's like, oh, why are you sitting here at the table? Like you're past here. You can sit at the
Yeah.
table. You know what I mean? I understand the
But I felt
comfortability.
so weird, man. I was just like, dude, this table's all the greats sat there, and you want me
Yeah,
to. So I don't know. It's kind of that thing where I always people are like, yo, you're making too much of it. I was like, nah, I mean, I just respect what's gone on before me. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So now you've been doing stand-up comedy for 20 years, but this is what's very cool that I love is that you started this app called Blap. And basically you can no matter where you are in the country, you can find or is it world? Is it country or world?
Works around the world.
So you can find black owned businesses if you want to support. And what made you come up with the concept and how'd you align yourself? How'd you put yourself in a position where you could align with people, billionaires basically, to put together this app?
I mean, for the most part, the reason that I got started on it is I was unemployed.
Mhm.
Being
Yeah.
out of work will make you do something creative.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were sitting at home, and to be honest, if I wasn't out of work, there wouldn't have been time to do it because all of my initial teammates that were involved were also out of work. And I hit up a friend of mine who Margot, who used to work at Facebook. So that was my first call to Silicon Valley, and then she was able to put the some other pieces together to get me to a prototype stage, a proof of concept. So my
Mhm.
buddy Matt put the joint together and said, "Hey, I'm going to send this to you. Let's see what happens." And then we tweaked it for around 4 to 6 weeks. But the last version that he sent me, I sent to a couple guys that are like they're like mentors.
Okay.
Call them advisors in the tech world, right? I sent it to my two advisors, and this time both of them hit me back probably within 4 to 5 minutes. I still remember
Wow.
where I was sitting. That's how big a deal it was that both of them hit me back and said, "This is going to be a lot bigger than you think."
Oh, that's great.
They were like, dude, this is the Uber of finding black home. Like you are now out in this is new technology that didn't exist prior to you sending this to me. And and both of them are also investors. So they were like, hey man, we put $10,000 here, $20,000 there, $50,000 here on 10 businesses all the
Uh-huh.
time, or 20 businesses, because you only need one to work.
Yep.
And they were like, this is the one. What you pulled off here, man. They said, of course you have to send it off to a development firm that makes it look good, the bells, the whistles. But they were like, but the functionality of this hasn't been seen. You're holding on to something that, you know what I mean? It's almost like finding a fish that no one's seen in the ocean on camera. And people are
Yeah.
like, oh my God, dude, bring
Yeah.
that up to the surface. You know what I'm saying? You're gonna make a lot of money and it's gonna do a lot of good. But the money thing wasn't on my mind. Otherwise, I would have charged to download the app. There's a
Yeah.
lot of ways I could have probably made money sooner. But
Uh-huh.
knowing that we lost half of all black-owned businesses, knowing that that black wealth in the black community is projected to go down to zero by 2050 because the circulation of our dollar keeps going down, not up. And I had studied this in college, man, about the circulation of the dollar with marginalized community. I was an econ major with an emphasis in poverty, so I've known that that there was a hole in our boat for a long time. How do we patch that hole? And I knew that this would be a way to do it, and the opportunity presented itself, man, with the lockdown.
And if it wasn't, it's interesting about that lockdown because I believe that was it was good and bad at the same time. So many people died, which was horrible. People went through so much pain. But if you survived it, man, I feel like a lot of people reevaluated their life. They found out what's important about their life. So many people moved because they realized, yo, I don't need to be here. Why am I here when I can go live a better life somewhere else? That's what happened to me and my wife and kids. We're like, I don't need to be in LA. I can do everything I want to do in Las Vegas. And if I need to go to Los Angeles, 45-minute flight.
Yeah.
But I can live in Vegas and be happy and not because I've never wanted to really raise my kids in Los Angeles. But I feel like so many businesses have taken off. There was a lot lost, but like yours, if you never had to sit down for a year and a half or 2 years off, basically, like we all were, you would have never came up with this idea.
Oh, definitely not. Absolutely. There's not a shot in hell. There's no way. And as a matter of fact, just as the lights were coming back on, because all the people that I worked with on the app, all of them have their own companies and they had to go back to work.
Yeah.
So just as we were finishing up all we could do with the prototype and I was handing it off to the development firm, um, yeah, they had to go back to work. So I mean that window was exactly the amount of time that we needed, but it's going really, really well now.
So it is called Blap. How do you spell it and how do people look it up?
Blapp, and it's
Mhm.
on the App Store, it's on the Play Store, and it's doing it. I mean, people are using it. It's doing a lot of good, man.
What is something that got you fired up about the news or life or like just the world right now?
Um, I think this app, man, these new developments that are
Okay.
going in there, people are really spending money. It's really making a difference.
Yeah.
So that's where I mean, my head is in the sand. I had a guy hit me, man, the other day at the cellar. Ran up on me. I had the logo on, and he said that his business had been really, really, really struggling, and he was starting to second guess it. He's got his own law firm in Fort Worth, and he said that someone came in and gave him a retainer, $5,000 a month for 2 years, and he said that's the only reason I have the money to be here. And he said, if you know anyone that works at that company, tell them they saved me. And
Wow.
he gets choked up, and then I get choked up, and I was like, "Man, you got to go watch the rest of the show, man. You can't just be
Right.
saying I don't want to be crying here at work. I got to host the rest of this show." But those stories, man, keep me going, and I keep getting these DMs like, "Hey, like to the Blap site, Blap the app." I keep
Uh-huh.
getting these DMs like, "Hey, some people found my business from this app. I just want to say thank you. Hey, I don't know who I'm sending this to, but this app, a crew of girls came and ate at my restaurant the other day, and they've been back, and some other people been coming in here using this app. Keep going, whoever y'all are, and that it's
That's
fuel.
beautiful.
Yeah, it's fuel.
So for people, because I always like to end the pod with like a positive message. You've been through a lot from being an All-American in basketball, going through a downtime, trying to get over that, rehab, and then finding comedy, and now you're killing it. But then comedy went away during the pandemic, and then you created the Zap, and now you're doing comedy again. What is your message for people listening to this podcast that are trying to find their thing or trying to find their meaning in life or their next business opportunity, to keep pushing? What is that message you got for them?
I don't know, man. I would say, be honest and then be patient, because sometimes people know what it is that they want to do. They're just scared to do it. You know what I mean? They know where their heart. We all know what makes us happy.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then sometimes people are like, oh, that doesn't pay enough money or it's going to take too long. So it's like, you got to be honest with yourself. Some people are like, my brother's the funniest one in our family. He's not willing to not have his bills paid every month. So you got to be brutally honest and then be patient, you know?
Gotcha. All
Yeah,
right,
be,
John.
be brutally honest, be patient. I think some of the best advice ever given to me too, man, um, was from a buddy of mine who's doing extremely well. And I've used this throughout my career. He said, never ask a motherfucker how to get something they don't got.
Yes. So many people get advice from people that aren't you should be getting advice from people that have achieved what you want to achieve, not
Yes.
the people trying to get it like you. Because obviously they don't know yet.
Yes. But you can keep
You
asking
can
those.
learn though. You can learn from because you'll find out the mistakes they've
Yes.
made and because they haven't got there yet. But that's yes, I agree with you 100%.
Yes. So make sure, whatever endeavor it is that whichever path you're headed down, make sure you're asking someone who can tell you, hey, this is where I started and this is how I got there. Because yeah, oftentimes, we're talking to somebody sitting next to us who's drunk about how to get sober. And
Yeah.
that's not gonna pan out for you.
That's right. That's right. That's like asking relationship advice from Johnny Depp and Amber Heard. You know what I mean?
Don't do it. Don't do it.
Don't do it. Just stay away from that. Stay clear. Stay clear. All
Yeah.
right, John. Where can people follow you? What's your handles?
My handles, he was funny. I'm on the gram. You're gonna please follow Blap the app as well. And
I will.
download the app. Yeah, you can go to blapapp.com and download the app. It's on the Play Store, the App Store. It's doing a lot of good. Or hit me at He Was Funny, either or.
All right, my man. Well, I appreciate your time, and we'll talk soon.
Yo, Michael, thank you, brother. I appreciate you.